Good morning. We are on our final chat with our In Harmony Cycle series. This is our fourth call. So, if this is your first time even hearing about this concept of cycle syncing, I suggest you watch the other three videos that are before this. But this is still good information. So, please stay and be tuned in. We're only going to be on today for about 15 minutes. So, we're talking about nutrition and supplementation, things that you can do to eat to optimally support your cycle. So, we're going to break it down into each phase, which has been kind of the theme that we've been going with for the last couple of weeks. And then at the end, I'm just going to suggest certain supplements that you can add in, including Organifi's current products and other products that you can take a look at on your own. And this is for women of all ages. Even if you are someone that's on birth control and you don't have a period per se, or if you're in menopausal age, this information is great for all women, because even if you are bleeding or not, you are a cyclical being as a woman. So just to recap, women are like the moon and men are like the sun. Men's hormones reset every 24 hours, whereas the moon goes through a 28 to 30 day journey, and every phase is different. So we have to do different things with our healthcare routines in order to really support our body's unique needs over the couple of weeks that they go through these changes. And you might even know all of this or notice it very subtly, just how you feel about your body, your appetite, your willingness or motivation to do certain things. It all has to do with your hormonal fluctuations. So if you feel like you're crazy for one day feeling confident and energized, and then the next feeling like you're really tired and sluggish, like, you're not alone. So we want to be empowered on this journey rather than a slave to all these hormonal changes. So let's get right into it. So with starting off that first week, which we call winter week, which is your menstruation week, it's really important to focus your diet on high iron foods. So if you eat animal proteins, this is a good time to really make sure that your diet is really packed in those. So red meats are really great for iron, but also there are tons of plant-based sources that you can get iron from. If you are a pescatarian, seafood sources are a great iron source, but those plant-based sources are spinach, beans, pretty much every other legume you can think of. This will replenish all the iron that you're essentially losing from the days that you bleed. So if you are someone that has an active period, whether it's regular or not, the time that you are bleeding, just think, okay, I need to up my iron intake. This will also give you more energy as you are shedding blood. Also, too, because you are a little bit more vulnerable in your body during this time, because you are releasing, vitamin C rich foods don't hurt to add in there just to build immunity. So you can eat things like oranges or squeeze lemon juice on top of some of your meals. But strawberries are actually surprisingly very high in vitamin C compared to those citrus fruits that we're always commonly told to consume. Organifi also has Critical Immune, which is a nice supplement to pop all month long. Keep in mind, for the supplement portion that I will be talking about, this isn't just to be done on a weekly basis. Supplements need to be added in consistently in order for you to see your body have a consistent change. And another thing too that really helps, especially as we enter into a fall season when we're recording these videos, is to have soups and stews. These are super nourishing. Like I mentioned, this being the winter phase of your body. So mimic what you would eat during the winter. And as we near the winter and colder weather, soups and stews are perfect for that. And they jam pack nutrients in them, because if you use a veggie broth, that's vegetables as your broth. If you add lots of veggies into the stew or the soup, you get a lot more jam-packed nutrients. I see a question here. How do you feel about soy? I heard once not to include soy if you have hormonal imbalances. It's actually kind of a myth. So a lot of people are afraid of soy, but it's actually the soy less. I always pronounce this word wrong, but I'm sure you've seen it on a product. It's lecithin. That is a processed soy, and that can create a kind of a hormonal storm in your body if you're consuming it in excess. Other products that you kind of want to avoid, if you will, are anything with like, I'm gonna kill people's vibe here, but like, and this is not nutrition related, but I mentioned it last week, is those candles that you smell from Bath and Body Works, because those are all chemically processed and those will disturb your hormonal imbalances. But soy is fine. Obviously, like having something in excess is not good for anybody. And even if it's healthy, I mean, if you eat a ton of carrots, you're going to turn orange. So in moderation, I have soy a couple times throughout the week with whole food plant sources. So if I see anything that says soy lecithin, I always say this word wrong, it's in a lot of those like oil sprays that we use. So just make sure that when you're buying those oil sprays, they just say like olive oil or avocado oil. And they're usually a couple bucks more, but it's worth it because those are the soys that are linked to cancer. That's a great question. So moving on to the second part of the follicular phase, which is the second week in your cycle, is pretty much the same as menstruation, but you can also add in a touch of foods rich in B12, like almonds, eggs, and shellfish. Again, if you eat animal proteins, that's a great time to just, again, pack those proteins in that first 2 weeks just to replenish your body for what it has lost if you were bleeding. Another good way to phrase this too is that second week of your period and like where you're almost like halfway through, is think of keeping things light, because just as we were in winter, we now enter into this inner spring phase. So just like spring is really light in certain foods, you could have like lighter types of stews, so nothing that's quite heavy as like a beef stew, but maybe something like a tom kha, which is like a coconut-based soup. You could also, if the weather permits it and you enjoy them, smoothies are a great option too, because again, they're jam-packing those nutrients that your body is craving. These first 2 weeks, as far as nutrition, self-care, healthy habits in general, are going to kind of dictate whether or not those PMS symptoms are as alarming and jarring and don't feel good in your body. So this is where you really want to make sure that your nutrition is on point. Again, I'm probably going to kill some people's vibe with this, but the 3 foods in all phases of your cycle, really, but especially during the time that you are bleeding and right around that period, so the weeks surrounding it, which is pretty much all of them, is you want to avoid excess sugar, processed foods, and caffeine. I know a lot of women love drinking their coffee, myself too, but as I get closer and closer to the time that I know I'm going to bleed, I limit my caffeine intake and I drink other morning beverages like a chai. I'm currently drinking what's called mud water. If you have Organifi products, the golds are great because those are going to help you relax. As we get into ovulation or ovulatory phase, ovulation actually only occurs for 1 to 2 days. It's a 48-hour window, but the ovulatory phase is about a week, and that's from days 14 to 21. So it's the week right before you PMS, if you experience PMS, premenstruation technically is what it's called. So this is probably when, again, you're going to feel really energized. And if you've watched the last 3 videos, I've kind of emphasized this as the season where you're superwoman and you feel on top of the world. And then towards the end of this phase, you start to feel really sluggish. And that's where those like dramatic shifts and maybe your level of confidence, your energy, your appetite, things just kind of flip-flop. And if you don't pay attention or track your cycle, you're going to feel confused or kind of like, what's wrong with me? Rather than like, I'm entering into a new phase of my cycle. This makes sense. So during this ovulation, it's like summer, you're super social. But again, protein is going to be this like solid backbone of your diet. Fats and fiber rich carbs are going to be your best friend. If you pack up and make sure that your diet is high in fiber on most days of your cycle, but especially during the ovulation phase, you will prevent a bulk of those PMS symptoms. So, for example, if you get a lot of bloating, which watch the last video that was before this, because we go through all of those PMS symptoms and breaking them down on fixes that you can use with food. If you get a lot of bloating, it could be because you have gut imbalances, or if you have a lot of cramping, maybe your body needs a little bit more nourishment, and maybe again you cut back on those sugary carbs or caffeinated drinks. This week, you'll actually need less carbohydrates. I'm all for eating carbohydrates. I think they belong in our diet because they're actually the golden standard of energy. But you'll find your appetite's probably really low because you just have natural energy, and carbs are meant to give us energy. So if you want to like play around with your nutrition, you can maybe lean off the carbohydrates, not getting rid of them completely by all means, because if you are an active person, you're going to need them. But I like to like kind of add more fat sources for my energy, and kind of take half of my serving of carb out and rely more on things like avocados or plant butters that are created with nuts. I'll also add a little bit more oils to my food just because it makes everything feel a little bit more nourishing. This will also be a good time that you just want to make sure that your gut health is in order. Again, with the supplementation, it's a month long or everyday type of journey, but keeping the gut health and not eating things that you know you're intolerant to or aggravate your stomach or body, or your gut, I should say. And also just making sure that you're staying hydrated, especially all month long. There's always balance too, to add in those probiotics, which will greatly support everybody, but especially women, because bloat, I feel like, is one of those things that, like, if you can get rid of it with just like making little tweaks to your nutrition, why not? So then lastly, we enter in and going through this phase of these journey of phases. We enter into premenstruation, which is known as fall, which is where we're at right now in the season of life in the world. So a key thing here is you might notice your appetite kind of goes up, which again, it's your body's natural way of like, okay, let's eat a little bit more to support that loss of energy. So again, the protein is going to be essential, but eat light, but often. So maybe eating every 3 hours and cutting your meals in half could be a trick that you do for yourself. You might notice you want more snacks. A lot of women tend to freak out like, oh my God, am I eating too many calories? I'm going to gain weight. But remember, last week, you'll notice you'll have a natural dip in your appetite, and this is your body's way of coming up from that. So we always will balance ourselves out. So if you ever are like, man, I'm really not that hungry, I feel like I should force myself to eat, don't. Obviously, eat something throughout the day if you're not hungry at all, just to give yourself adequate nutrition. But your body will compensate for that with the next week as it preps to bleed. So foods rich in B vitamins are going to be great for calcium, magnesium, and fiber. This is going to help you to prevent those crazy cravings, especially if you're someone that you feel like they're out of control. Incorporating root veggies is a nice practice to do as well with protein. This can kind of give you this energetic feeling of keeping grounded, which is what you want to do as your body is about to shed. If you feel like your cravings are a little bit out of control, if you are grocery shopping the week before and you know you're going to enter into your premenstruation phase, it's best to have a treat on hand. That way you can have it and it's there for you, rather than being like in this position where you feel vulnerable and then you go to the gas station and buy an ice cream bar that really isn't going to serve you, because it's going to make you want that sugar more, and B, if you are intolerant to any of those things or things that aggravate your gut, it's going to set you up kind of for a little bit of a hormonal imbalance with the next week and make your period a little bit harder. That's why Gold is a great product for this, because there's literally, I think, like 1 gram or 0 grams of sugar, and the chocolate one is great. The pumpkin one is great. Those are nice if you have like a hankering for something. But again, those B vitamins, calcium and magnesium and fiber will prevent those if you feel like it has to be something that's like not going to serve you. Okay. There's a few supplements that we can incorporate. I've mentioned 2 already, which was the Balance as a probiotic and Gold. I think every night that should be part of our rituals, if you will, just whether it's with water or some nut milk, just to keep you grounded and prevent you from eating other foods that don't necessarily serve you. All phases too, besides having a nutritionally adequate diet, if you feel like you are lacking all of your vitamins, having a protein smoothie with the Organifi protein powder, it has a multivitamin in it. So if you have that protein smoothie, which protein was a huge goal for all of those phases, you're getting a double whammy there. But I always say supplementation should add to an already nutritionally adequate diet. It shouldn't replace it. So do try to balance your diet, and then if you need a little help filling in those gaps, that's where these supplements can come into place. And there are also 3 herbal supplements that you can really hone in on. One is Maca. So this has been known to balance hormone levels and also improve reproductive health and decrease negative side effects of menopause. So it's great for women of every phase of life. It's a root. I believe it's from Peru, if I'm not mistaken, but you can get it in capsule form or a powdered form and add it to a smoothie. Chaste tree berry is another herbal supplement that's very commonly known and popular to help women with hormonal balance, and it's great for PMS and cramps. If you can get into the habit of consuming this every single day, this will greatly improve your period. And then last but not least, another herbal supplement that I would recommend is called shatavari. It's a great herb to balance hormones. It improves your libido, decreases PMS symptoms, and decreases menopausal symptoms. So again, another one of those herbs that's great for women of all phases of life. Organifi is actually working on something special for you guys that includes all 3 of those last 3 ingredients that I have mentioned. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Wink, wink. So if you have any questions, I'm an open book, but this completes all 4 weeks of this In Harmony Cycle Syncing series. I hope it shed light to something that, again, we haven't really covered or talked or discussed about since we were in the 5th grade. And maybe it wasn't even an in-depth conversation that you remember. This information is meant to empower you and make you feel grounded and know what the heck is going on with your body. So if this is your first time watching it, or you're tuning in and watched all the other videos, go utilize this information and start with one topic and work your way from there. So maybe one cycle you focus on nutrition, and until you feel like you've mastered that, you can then move on to exercise and so forth. I always recommend starting with, if you have PMS symptoms, to get those out of the way, using those food fixes that I used in the last videos to help you prevent those, and then working your way and kind of filling in the gaps with like whatever you need. But I'm going to go ahead and end it. It's been a lovely 4 weeks and 20 minutes today, and I'm sure I'll see you inside Insider someday soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.